Redditors who grew up with shady criminal parents. What did your mom or dad teach you was okay to do that you later learned was illegal or seriously frowned upon? Serious. My dad stole a few things in a sneaky way so my brother and I would have won each. In one instance, for example, he bought a Game Boy game. He brought it back to the car, removed the cartridge, and took it back into the store saying the case was empty. He did the same thing with those Pikachu Tamagotchi things. I think his biggest steal was a PlayStation 2. He actually did purchase one. My mum went in and picked it up, but when leaving the store, the door person didn't tear the receipt. So, my dad took the receipt back in, picked up another PS2, stuck the receipt on it and walked out. The door person tore the receipt this time but obviously didn't pay attention to the time of sale. Dad also ran a huge business of installing chips in PlayStations so they could play copied games. He would rent games, burn a copy, then sell copies to other people. We had a whole library and catalog of copied games and dad had quite a few customers. Looking back I see how dodgy it was and why he told me not to tell too many people about it. I never knew we weren't allowed to drink at the local fair. Mom used to bring beer in a cooler when we went, until I was 21 and a cop stopped me when I was walking around with a beer. So this question brings up a very specific memory. My dad never said explicitly that what he was doing was acceptable, but he certainly didn't tell me that this was wrong. I'm between the ages of 5-7, unsure about a specific timeline on this, and my mom is often working in the evenings while my dad is sporadically around. One night, while my mom is gone, dad gathers me to go for an adventure. Usually this means driving around the city and looking at stuff. Well, dad pulls up to a hospital and parks. He sits with me in the car and gives me a script, saying that we recently moved here, a lie, and that he had hurt his back while moving boxes, mega lie. I play along because hey, it's my dad and sure, whatever he says goes. Any other specifics from that night are hazy. I think he managed to talk his way into some sort of painkiller prescription. This was in the early zeros so opiates weren't as visible as now. My dad has been in successful treatment since then, but man, that's a big memory that stands out for how screwed up my younger life was. There were a lot of weird things I didn't think much of as a kid but realized were ducked up as an adult. Like how our family moved 13 times in 15 years. I just assumed people got new houses all the time, and how sometimes I would go to the freezer for some ice cream and find stacks of cash in the containers. Just weirded like that. My dad's no serious criminal, but petty in every way, including the crime he commits. I was basically taught to play dumb, act like you belong, and you can do whatever you want. We snuck into VIP lounges, other people's buffets and parties at restaurants and events. He once lied to a ticketer at a movie theater and got mad when they couldn't find the tickets he ordered online. He had not ordered tickets but there was a huge line and he didn't want to wait. We got in for free and cut a huge line. Also cut lines at Disney Worlds and other sorts of places. I have fond memories of hanging out in the shed with my parents. Me playing with my dolls and them harvesting their money trees. Weed strewn all over the floor, hanging from the ceiling. The leaves made into a little bed for my Barbie to sleep in. My family did a lot of petty, trashy crime, shoplifting, theft, domestic assault, drugs, etc. I thought it was normal for adults to just kinda go to jail every few years for a day or two until I was 10. Now, my stepdad is out of my life. My mom is too old ill to do anything particularly bad. And my dad may have helped finance a district attorney's election, which has saved him mountains in legal fees for himself and the hookers he frequents. My mom and dad are trained artists and teachers and they would frequently counterfeit things like parking permits, coupons, doctor's notes, etc. It was wild. Shoplifting for the most part. I mean, like she never made us do it, but she didn't hide what she was doing either. She's the reason model homes have cameras now lol. My dad was a mechanic. The ones that stick out was when he would charge for a new replacement part and then go to the local junkyard and get the part from there. If the customer asked up front he would be honest and offer the two options. Junkyard part equals cheap but likely reliable, or new equals expensive and only parts warranty. If they didn't ask, most of the time it was a junkyard part. Rarely got in trouble or called out since his prices were a fraction of regular shops. Oh, I guess the other main shady part was that he wasn't a legit certified mechanic and most business was cash under the table. His apprentice is now my mechanic and he learned from my dad's mistakes. He provides receipts, boxes, and shows me where he installed the new part, and it's always shiny and new, minus obvious grease handling installation marks. I used to be told everything was okay as long as you don't get caught. They kind of said it like a throwaway phrase, but I really took it to heart. It gave me a real lack of respect for any authority at all and made it seem more like a game than real life consequences. I would do illegally just to get the rush of wondering and whether or not I'd be caught. Once I was caught, I would just shrug and act like their winning didn't bother me. Kinda like their punishment was just them gloating about me getting caught. A family friend was in the import-export business for gemstones. I didn't realize it could be illegal to transport gems across borders. We would have gem parties where a dining table that can sit 12 would be completely covered in bowls of gems and jewelry to buy. Same as Tupperware parties, but for gems. Some stones my parents got appraised shocked their jeweler. Super rare colors of different stones that they had never seen before. That friend has gone legit. Owns some mines in Africa now. I mean, I knew it was illegal, but probably growing all the cannabis when I was a kid. Dad was gonna die of cancer, so he wanted to leave us some money. It was like Diet Breaking Bad. My dad was a tow truck driver and he would always bring me little presents as a kid that he got out of people's tower cars. As far as I knew, if someone knew their car was going to get towed, they took everything they wanted out of it and the rest was fair game. Blow into breathalyzers so they could drive. While my dad was never a criminal, unless you count the one time he was wanted all over the US because he forgot to convert CAD into USD when paying a ticket. Warrant expired, I think, on terms he had been a good boy since it, so he tells me. He had fun in his past. A few things he taught me were, if you ever get in a conflict, try to walk away. If you can't, run. If you still are unable to get away, turn around and beat them until they go down. Tell them to stay down. And if they try to get up, beat them down again. Repeat as necessary. Allowed to drink and do drugs, all I wanted on the condition I ask him. He would find me clean stuff. Taught me that if I ever got grabbed, shove my fingers into a guy's eyes and pop them like grapes. Taught me how to street fight. Be either one who stands up and walks away wins. Pretty much what's already been said. Have confidence. Commit to the con. And act like you belong. Scary how effective this is, lol. My boyfriend always talks about the stories of his dad having friends everywhere. Family would talk about how his now late father had friends no matter where he went in the city, and how great that was. And no matter where they stopped, he would randomly know someone there. Then as an adult he realized that his dad just had drug dealers everywhere and that's who he was always seeing. It's not fair for me to ask you a question without sharing something of my own. My mother was pretty shady. She was a opioid and benzo addict who took me doctor shopping from place to place looking for prescriptions. She faked seizures and had a rolling list of medical complaints. I don't know if she believed all of her illnesses were real, but she sure acted like she did around us and medical staff. She taught me that it was okay to manipulate doctors, but somehow I grew up to be exactly the opposite, and that I feel embarrassed and guilty seeking medical care even for a legitimate complaint. My mom was a drug dealer. There are so many things I could list, but I'm on my phone, so just a few things off the top of my head. Smoking pot. When I was about 4, I chased my mom through the Woolworths drugstore screaming, "Mommy, mommy, you dropped your joint. Don't you want your joint?" She hurried fast to shushing me and I got a big talking to that afternoon. Snorting coke. I was in the 2nd grade when I got sent to the principal's office for teaching my friends how to make lines with salt and use part of a milk straw to snort it. My mom was really pissed. Don't talk to cops or any straight people. I didn't know why at first, but I lived in terror of straight people. I got congratulations for making it through FBI questioning when I was probably 6 years old when they raided our land. SWAT teams are scary. Boobs are good for smuggling. Cleaning out stems and seeds is a fun summer job. Don't say anyone's name on the phone. Those are just a few things I immediately recall. 2. I forgot to add how every now and then people in our circle of friends would move far away for a while and change names, and we weren't ever allowed to call them by their old names. My mom also made us believe that morphine was an excellent pain reliever for all ages. If we were at home and they yelled pigs, we were to hide behind the couch and be silent. If we were in the car and they yelled pigs, we had to crawl into the floorboard and not move a muscle. I was kidnapped in grade 3 by my dad's supplier. He held us for 2 days. We had no idea. My sister and I met him before. Lots of times. When he showed up at school and said our parents were on vacation and to go with him, we did. They had soda and Oreos and a puppy and a Sega Genesis, and it was the best weekend of my life. Found out 20 years later when my mom was complaining about never having had a vacation in her life. I reminded her of that vacation and she said, "You idiot, you were kidnapped." Oh, cool. Drugs. I had no idea they were illegal until I was a lot older than I should have been to understand they're illegal. My father was a grower and distributes to a well-known MC he was a part of. We grew up running around pot fields. I slept on a couch most of my childhood because all the rooms had been converted in hydroponic setups. Our roof space was converted into storage where it was garbage bags of weed, around 100-150 SQM, all stacked on top of each other. The stupid it too. Apparently owning and registered firearms is illegal. You need a driver's license to drive a vehicle. My dad grew up always in a fight. He was arrested several times. Kicked out school because he was the poor kid and grandpa wouldn't put the bottle down long enough to pay his books. The obvious poor kid in every way. He took a lot of it for it but eventually got good with his fists just because he had to. He taught me that no matter what, if you are in a fight, that the person who hit you is trying to take your life. There is no boys will be boys or fighting for fun. They hit you. They are trying to kill you. In those instances I was to go for their eyes and their throat immediately. If they can't see and they can't breathe, they ray duct. You get to go earn your blood party. I beat the duck out of 2 kids first week of kindergarten and got kicked out. We had therapists show up and the whole thing. It was normal for people in my family to be in and out of jail. It was normal for most of my family to have some sort of criminal record. We were always taught to not respect cops. For example, when my dad found weed in my 16-year-old sister's car, instead of reprimanding her for having it, he reprimanded her for how easy it would be for cops to find. We were always watching mob movies and my dad would just gush about how classy and cool they were. It's just little stuff like that mostly, nothing like outrageous. My parents used to run guns down to Mexico, about 2,000 a week. Every weekend we would drive there and get back for school on Monday. I don't know, and probably will never know, what my parents did. However, we would leave the house at night time and go drive through certain parks. Occasionally my parents would panic and tell us to hide. We had to crawl onto the floorboard in the back of a tiny Buick. My dad came home with injuries sometimes and my mom always said he fell. And finally, in that particular town, they hated the cops. They claimed they were all corrupt. Maybe they were. IDK. My dad did a lot of petty crime as I was growing up because we were lower middle class, hard on money, and he was cheap. Biggest thing that comes to mind was us living near a Christmas tree farm out in the country. There's a little trail that leads through the reforestation in front of my house to the tree farm. So for a few years we stole our Christmas tree from there. We would go one day during the day for a walk and tag one of the trees that we wanted, and then that night we'd come with flashlights, cut it down and drag it through the trail to our house. Dad didn't want to spend $30 on a tree from Home Depot. He also broke into my mom's dad's house when I was young to look for money he apparently kept in a tin can hidden. Never found it, but when I was young my parents told my brother and I that he was looking for my nanny's wedding band. He was abusive. She left in the middle of the night with the kids. He always said he threw away her ring, but she never believed him. Now I'll look back and go WTF. I never thought it was normal growing up, but I also didn't experience these things and go holy at my dad's breaking the law. My blood father was a drug dealer and he often came home with some really nifty stuff. I later found out it was stuff he got from people who didn't have cash on them but still wanted to buy. I think the thing I feel most guilty about was a Game Boy Advance I was given that we'd either only have for a little while or have forever. When he said that, it was usually forever. It had a heap of games with it and I went through and started new games on all of them, erasing the existing save files. Well, he took it back after about a month. So I guess whoever it was paid up. And I feel really sorry for their kid. Mummy or daddy was an addict and used their Game Boy Advance as collateral, and when they got it back, all their saves were gone. I was only a kid at the time and didn't really know the context in which I was handed the thing. But I know it belonged to a kid since there were quite a few young child learning game cartridges alongside Mario and Pokemon. Mom. Panhandle. I thought all kids' parents did this. Borrowing money from your kids for your addictions. My mom would reward me for cleaning, then when she get low would ask me to borrow money for mommy's medication. Beer, crack, weed. My original comment was not very informative, Naosabu's copyright airing. I had the opposite experience than most of these comments. My dad spent a significant portion of my childhood in prison. He got pretty paranoid about me one day having the potential of being the victim of a violent crime. Because of this I had ridiculous rules to follow because he knew what the real world was like. I wasn't allowed to use ATMs or rest stops at gas stations that have an attendant or clerk ever, but especially at night. Any car I drive has to have a fully stocked functioning emergency kit with flare guns. I must carry pepper spray and brass knuckles with me at all times and few others, but you get the gist. It was like being locked up with violent offenders made him realize that the world I was growing up in was fairly dangerous and he panicked. I grew up in a relatively hostile environment. So many people come up so much worse. So I'm not really complaining. In which my mom had a bunch of boyfriends. Most were cool. Some were garbage. Nice ladies came to talk to me at school sometimes. And after the first visit, my mom coached me pretty hard about what to say. She definitely taught me that beer was just soda that grown-ups drank that only tastes good when you're grown up. So he drinks a lot of soda came up a few times. Again, really not that bad. But come on, Ma, the duck. Stealing, especially from construction sites. Condoning physical assault. And in some cases murder. So both sides of my family is super poor, but my parents decided they were going to buy a house, which led to me being left around my Nan house. Alet. Nan and my auntie live together. Nan is the glue for the family, but auntie is a heroin addict. This funded by Alet of petty theft. I'm quite good at distraction and sleight of hand. Not the magician stuff, but make a scene and your accomplice will nick a few things. Pretending to be poor to get free stuff. My mom would lie about income so I could get free meals at school. She lied about my dad's income to get more child support, which I didn't get. I just thought that she was doing her best to provide, when in reality she was very selfish and wanted everyone else to pay her way. Back in the 90s my dad got me a Sony PlayStation with a chip in it to play burnt games, so he used to go to Blockbuster after Blockbuster renting games, then burning them and having the copy forever. If there was still time after we made all the copies, we would go back to the Blockbusters and he would say this video game was too graphic for my son. I was 8-9 at the time, and they would let us switch the game for no extra charge. Did this for about 2 years, had a collection of 150 plus games for PS1. That man taught me to be a pirate. My parents trained and raced horses on a small circuit that followed all the country fairs and carnivals in our area. Half of every year we lived and traveled with the shadiest group of gambling addicted, drunken cheats and liars. My parents were no better than any of them. I learned that winning wasn't a big deal. It was getting paid that mattered. Cheating was just what you did. Any information you had you used to your advantage, no matter who suffered because of it. Fair play was for suckers. And above all else, bet on every race, every day, every season. Everyone had that gleam in their eye, the gambler's look. Today, I don't even play the lotto or buy raffle tickets or have even set foot in a casino. I detest gambling and gamblers. Can't stand any of it. Low-key, I believe gambling is a weakness. My brother, who was more than a decade older than me, was a drug dealer. A prominent one as well. He pretty much could get you anything. I have fond memories of driving around at night with him, making stops to see his friends and then him getting money. Sometimes clients would come to the house to pick up their stuff. I can remember getting bags of pills together. At the time, pills, especially Oxy, were all the rage. He used to call himself a pharmacist. When we would go out, you'd notice certain people would follow us. My brother would point them out. That's a detective. That's the etc. My brother died almost 10 years ago. I'm a professor who teaches criminology. Today we're actually talking about drug trafficking, which naturally is my favorite crime and the one I've studied the most. Not my parents, but a friend's dad gave us some solid advice that I always remembered. Remember boys, don't break the law when you're breaking the law. It applies in so many ways. For example, don't run a stop sign when you've got weed in the car. Or don't speed if your inspection is out of date. Or don't get the police called for a noise complaint if you've had a beer while underage. He was a shady guy, but oddly wise in many ways. My dad taught me how to weight cash out on a scale so you don't have to actually count it. Taught me how to roll a joint and how to use a gun. He gave me my first Xanax. And my first beer. TBH, he did the best he could for me with what he knew how to do. My dad was legit, but was raised hardcore Chicago. He went to Oak Park High School with the actual guys that Joe Pesci and Robert De Niro played in the movie Casino. He also did a lot of business with connected people that had transitioned into owning lucrative, legitimate businesses. Still, he has been around, and I definitely received many good bits of advice in true Chicago flavor. The best advice he gave me was if I ever had a cop asking me questions, always answer yes sir or no sir, and if I ever got in trouble for anything where I was arrested, to shut your ducking mouth. Period. Don't say anything. Ask for a lawyer, and tell them, with all due respect, I am not answering any questions without my lawyer present. Thank you. My old man has tons of colorful colloquialisms. One of the more unique ones was nothing will duck up a good man more than a bad car, or a daffy broad. I have found that to be very true. Weed. Both my parents smoked it all the time. Even grew it at home. The smell of it kinda felt like home to me. I only realized there was something wrong with it when I was playing hide and seek with a friend and my dad told me not to let her see the grow room.